We got a lot of stuff to cover today. So I welcome all of you. My name is Tim Leiberg with Entrepreneurial, located in Northeast Ohio, just outside Cleveland. While others continue to join in, please take a moment and enter your name, organization, and location in the chat. That gives us a little bit of context for those of you who we might not know that well just yet. And it's going to be of interest to our speakers as well to know who's on the call. Also, throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the chat to enter questions that you have for our four presenters. We're going to be monitoring the chat as we go, and we'll catch up with them in our Q&A segments. I'm going to be spotlighting the speakers, but if you wish to see others on the call, please go to the View button in the upper right-hand corner on your screen, and you can select Gallery. And the gallery will show you everyone who is in attendance. As a reminder, we are going to be recording today's program, so you'll have access to the conversations that happen later. That recording will be sent out to everyone who's registered for the event. This is one of our regular monthly programs, and today we're going to be focusing on elevating entrepreneurship in all its forms as an increasingly important part of the Encore experience and as a potential topic for future focus for the Encore network. The agenda that we're going to be following today, shortly I'll be introducing our panel members, after which each of them will offer their insights and perspectives on Encore entrepreneurship, and we'll have a short little Q&A after each of their presentations. Again, for the sake of time efficiency, please drop your questions into chat. That'll help us work through that, because after that, we're going to be moving into breakout sessions for about 15 minutes. People will be arbitrarily distributed into those breakout sessions. And we're going to be focusing on three primary questions. One, why are older founders more successful? And for those of you who doubt that they are, Mary's going to be sharing some data around that to confirm, in fact, that that is the case. Two, what are some of the barriers to success for Encore entrepreneurship that you see or have experienced yourself? And number three, how can we leverage our strengths as Encores to enable wider adoption of Encore entrepreneurialism? Following the breakouts, each group will be able to offer summaries on what they've discussed. And as you go into breakouts, I'll remind you of this later, please select a spokesperson for your breakout group who will report out for the group. So let's meet our panelists. I'll wait to spotlight you until I've introduced everyone. First, Mary Cronin is the author of Starting Up Smarter, Why Founders Over 50 Build Better Companies. Mary is the founder of 4Q Catalyst, a business advisory firm, and a research professor at Boston College, where she teaches entrepreneurship. Mary will be helping to define what we mean by entrepreneurialism, offer some quick facts on where things stand with Encores in this space, and highlight some of the unique strengths and challenges that she sees in her work. Secondly, Doug Dixon, the chair of the Encore Boston Network and co-founder of the Encore Network Leadership Council and Encore Network, and author of one of the chapters in Mary's book under the title of Leading with Purpose in Starting Up Smarter. Doug will be speaking to how this focus on social purpose for our demographic in the Encore stage of life, and the motivations we have later in life relate to Encore entrepreneurialism. And finally, Wendy Mayhew will be speaking. She is the author of Wiser, the definitive guide to starting a business after the age of 50. Wendy is a speaker, entrepreneur with more than 40 years experience successfully launching and managing businesses across Canada. Wendy will be sharing her insights on why older founders are more successful, what barriers to success we need to be aware of, and how we can leverage our unique strengths to address those barriers. With that, I'm going to hand off to Mary at this point and put you in the spotlight, Mary.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so thank you for asking me to be part of this panel. And I want to just share very quickly why I felt it was urgent to write yet another book about entrepreneurship, particularly for older founders, and to give you some insights into what our theme for today is, which is that over 50 is a great age to start a company. And not only that, but the important message is that founders over 50 who do start companies do so often primarily to solve social problems and to make the world a better place. And we all need more of that. My message in the book and why I wrote it is contrary to the popular perception that younger is better when it comes to startups. Data, a large study of 2.7 million startups in the US in the past decade, actually proved conclusively that middle age and beyond, as the study discreetly said, but that means over 50. In fact, those founders were 4.1% more likely, times more likely to be successful in their companies. So that's news that really hasn't penetrated venture capitalism or funders or public perception. And those studies, that's exciting data for us who are promoting older entrepreneurship, but it doesn't say why. And so I wrote Starting Up Smarter and researched what older founders have in common to find out the why. Why are older founders more successful? What do they have in their strategy for startups? And what is there about their company growth that enables them to be successful? So I found 6 important things. And I have stories about each and every one of the founders featured in the book, because I go into in-depth tracking of their experience and startup journey, from their mission to their acquiring customers and getting funding or not, to their growing their revenue. But I'm going to put those aside for the Q&A, and they're all in the book. So here's the common elements that I want to put a focus on and get your feedback as we break into discussions and you hear from the other panelists. So first, yes, having a purpose, desiring to make the world a better place. In my research, having a positive social impact is a critical element, and it aligns older founders with actually the world at large and social expectations of all corporations today, as does the next factor I found in common, which is older founders are generous in wanting to share value with all stakeholders. And that means with their employees, with co-founders, with customers, and indeed in having a social impact in with citizens at large. And the third element, and Rick Terriant, a shout out to Rick, who's here in the group today and who also contributed an excellent chapter to Starting Up Smarter on regenerative sustainability. Older founders almost universally prioritize sustainability in their company and often start companies specifically with sustainability solutions. And that's really critical to their success. It enables them to attract co-founders of all ages. It enables them, when they do attract financing, to convince impact investors to put money into their companies. And when they don't find those investors, and normally they do not, and that is a barrier, it enables them to jumpstart their companies and find alternative sources of financing and investment. And it also means that willingness to share the value, they attract better talent, and they are more likely to retain their talent. So in all of the stories of the founders that I wrote about in the book, they have been successful in keeping their employees in the midst of the pandemic and the Great Resignation. Because they have been able to recruit employees who share their purpose, and also they have exhibited a commitment to inclusion and diversity in their companies, which increases employee loyalty and productivity, as well as customer loyalty. So If Tim isn't already giving me the high sign that it is time for wrapping up, I am very aware that we committed each to 5 minutes and no more. And so that we would have more time for questions and your participation later in the meeting. So on to Doug with a thanks for an excellent chapter.
Thanks very much, Mary. And we will go on to Doug, but I want to remind everyone, please feel free to drop any questions you have for Mary into chat, and we'll address those before we move into breakout groups. Doug?
Okay, thank you, Tim and Mary. What I'm going to do is elaborate a little bit on what Mary talked about from the perspective of social science research. There are a number of psychosocial factors that I think can help us explain what the advantages that older entrepreneurs bring to their startups. For those of you who are familiar with the work of Erik Erikson and developing the sort of early descriptions of life stages and development, he came up with this idea of generativity, which he said arose at midlife, which in his era was early 40s, and extending for roughly the next 20 years. And this is a concern for the next generation and helping others, both in terms of immediate family, but also extending beyond that to others and the concept of legacy. The work of Gene Cohen built on that, and he identified a more nuanced set of stages later in life. One being this notion of liberation, which comes roughly between the years of 50 and 70. His proposition, based on his research, was that people reach a stage of life where they're not burdened as much by careers, child rearing, and so on, and see the possibilities of life in a new way. And he says that this is characterized by some questions like, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it, right? And my time may be running out. And besides, what if I screw up, or what if something happens? What are they going to do to me? So this is another data point. The work of Laura Carstensen on the positivity effect, through which she had documented that older people, and I think this is associated with the happiness curve, older people tend to focus more on the positive and have not just a tendency to look on the bright side, but also are actively filtering out negative input so that they maintain a more positive outlook. And this concept was added to through brain imaging work by Kaoru Nishiro and others at University of Southern California, where they documented that actually changes in the brain are responsible for this kind of optimism, but also help people to better regulate their emotions, stay focused, and filter out distractions. So then I turn to the work of Richard Leiter, who many of you know, he's done a lot of work on purpose, and he just has a formula for describing what he calls what he speaks of as a calling, gifts plus passion plus values. And I reoriented that a little bit for this purpose, but instead of gifts, I talk about strengths, the things that we know and do well, passion, what we feel strongly about, and values, the things that we believe are important. And I think older entrepreneurs, in fact, people of all ages, I think draw on this combination of elements in determining how they move forward in their lives. But I think in particular, it helps us understand the pathways to entrepreneurship for older adults, because one or the other of these seems to take the lead as people decide what they're going to do and how they're going to respond. I think the point that I want to make in closing is that older adults, and I want to be careful not to engage in reverse ageism here. But so I will be as objective as possible. But when we talk about strengths, we're talking about knowledge, skills, life experience. And the more life experience, the more time you have, the more strengths you develop. So I think we can see how strengths plays to the advantage of older entrepreneurs. Values, I think many younger people are still in a formative stage in terms of their values. Older adults, I think, have more embedded values, a clearer sense of what those values mean. And I think, once again, the advantage would go to older adults when we talk about values. Passion, I think, is something that's shared more or less equally across the lifespan. The case that I would make is that the more experience you have, the better able you are to direct that passion and to make decisions about what is important and how to apply it. So I think that this is another way to see why it is that older adults seem to have a strong advantage in terms of business success. And I would also suggest that it's not one or the other, that I think there are many ways or many instances in which we can document that enterprises are successful when they call on the abilities and perspectives of people of all ages. And with that, I will turn it over to Wendy.
Thank you, Doug. So I'm going to turn a little bit different from what Mary and Doug have been talking about. Yes, it's very related, obviously, to entrepreneurship. But I want to talk about succession planning. Right now, it's crazy what's going on in the world. And before this call started, I mentioned to the other panelists how big Ohio is. Because on average, 10,000 people a day are retiring in the state of Ohio. And they're retiring without a succession plan in place. Now, the US isn't the only one that's doing this. This is happening too. I mean, it's in Canada, it's global, but the ones that I've been looking at, on average, 80% of business owners are retiring without a succession plan. And what is that doing? Well, they don't have a succession plan for many reasons. And part of it is they don't know where to go to find somebody to take over their business, or family members aren't interested in doing it. And so what they're doing is basically leaving the businesses. They're closing their businesses. The impact that this is having on the economy is the loss of trillions of dollars to the economy, the loss of employment, and just a business that so many customers may have depended on over the years is gone. So what we need to do, because we know, and we've all talked about this, older entrepreneurs are the newest and fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the world. They're also very, very successful, but we have to make it reasonably easy for them to have a succession plan so that when they are ready to retire, that someone will take over their business. I have been, as I say, doing quite a bit of research on this, and there is actually a company here in Canada that has a course on succession planning. Many people have signed up for it, paid for it, but haven't started the course. So there is a problem that we need to solve. How are we going to get them to start taking courses and understanding the importance of succession planning? And it's hard to find a co-founder. In the last 2 weeks, I've had 4 people reach out to me to see if I could help them find a co-founder. I had originally thought of doing a matching platform like this, and I made the decision last week that I wasn't going to move forward with it because it is just going to be too difficult. And at 71 years of age, Yes, I still love being in business, but I'm not sure I want to put that amount of effort and work into something that I'm not going to see a return on for a number of years. So in lieu of that, of me doing it, there are co-founder matching programs available. I've been attempting to reach out to them to see if, they have or will put a section in place sort of thing for older entrepreneurs to be looking for a co-founder. Unfortunately, nobody has gotten back in touch with me, and I sense that might be the same with all of them, because we still have this problem that older entrepreneurs are not being recognized as viable businesses. Even though all the data says how successful we are, we're still having an issue with that. So what we collectively need to do to help this newest group stay in business, even though they're out of it, have either a co-founder or a partner to take it over, we need to start addressing that more vigorously and find solutions for them and encourage them to start looking at co-founders early on. Other than those co-matching programs, I think some of the solutions are at universities, colleges, small business organizations that are supporting entrepreneurship to include both groups of entrepreneurs. Right now, there is a company that I'm working with in Canada that actually has five groups, okay, that they have matched with them to start a business together. And I'm going to be following that very, very closely and doing interviews with them just to encourage it, to find out the problems that they've been facing and how they've got through those problems and rectified them, and to continue having a business together. So that is what I am focusing on right now. The importance of us, as I say, starting a business later in life, having a great time doing it, being successful, but not letting it go. Like in Ohio, 10,000 people retiring a day. It's crazy. Thank you.
Wendy. And thank you, Mary and Doug, as well. So we've got some very interesting introductions to this whole concept of entrepreneurial activity as encores. I want to spend just a few minutes here generating questions from the group before we break into breakout groups. And I'm wondering if anyone has something that they would like to offer up. If you do, you can just raise your hand so I can see you.
I kind of was intrigued by the comment I think Mary made that most startups go in with a sustainability plan, in the context of Wendy's comment about the number of businesses that don't have a sustainability plan. So I'm curious about drilling down. That's the one piece that keeps me up at night. And I'm concerned as I meet other entrepreneurs or initiatives, including a lot of the members in Encore that are committed, but there's really, like as Wendy said, once we stop, that's a huge loss to the economy in terms of service. I don't know about the revenue piece yet.
And I would just say that in the work that I've done in the case studies and founder stories, many founders who are successful and taking a long-term view, they deliberately do recruit onto their teams, either initially as a co-founder, or co-founders can come on board anytime and be given the title of co-founders, even 5 years after the company has launched. And that's often a strategy. But so many of the founders I interviewed and profiled in Starting Up Smarter very specifically said that their purpose in founding the company was a magnet for talent across generations, and that they deliberately brought on team members who supported the same mission and wanted to stay with the company, and are training those team members to be their successors. So it's not that they're, and I understand what Wendy is saying is a service too, to have matchups, but really what works for me strategically in many years of doing business advisory is bringing people on as team members and then helping them to grow into a position as a successor over time, not trying to identify external talent to bring on board to take a co-founder role immediately.
And then, of course, I'd love to drill down on the difference between, a startup or a business that has funding and a business model versus those that are trying to bootstrap, where the distinctions are there. Co-founders are easy when you have money or some kind of viable equity.
And that's, again, I'll just say quickly, like one of the companies the biggest company I wrote about in revenue is $86 million. And it's a solar energy company, and they could not raise money. They're headquartered in Maine, and they bootstrapped. And the founder was in his mid-60s, and he co-founded with two team members who were in their 30s at the time. And they just ran lean until they had revenues in order to grow the company. And now they're an $86 million annual revenue company, completely employee owned, by the way, at this time, and a B Corp, a certified B Corp as well. So they're living the mission, and they're also a business success. And that's really, to me, the message that we need to be aware of and share is that this is good business. It's not just good for society, it's good for business to have a mission and a purpose and stick with it.
And I would just add one thing, and it's a yes and comment. There are some businesses, and I think including social enterprises, that are deliberately short-term in their focus, right? They're looking to solve a certain problem. And I think it can be a detriment if businesses that need to have a short lifespan are, as there's an effort made to extend them, when the market just isn't there. So I've seen several instances in which people have basically pulled the plug at points where they felt as though they had accomplished the purpose that they set out to accomplish, and then moved on to do other things.
Mm-hmm.
Great conversation. I want to retain a good amount of time for our breakout groups. So it sounds like we've got some good ideas flowing here. We're going to go ahead into breakout groups and debating on how many here. We have more than 20 in the group. What do you think? 5 breakout groups? 4, 5? Okay. So Kelly, if you want to send us off into 5 breakout groups, that would be great. And you will automatically be assigned. I'll be giving a 5-minute heads up before we can come back into our session. So welcome back, everyone. We're going to proceed now into some report outs. And Mary, we have you facilitating those report outs, and I'm going to capture some notes in the background while we're doing that. Is that okay?
Yes, that's terrific. And those of you who haven't seen Tim's way of capturing notes, you'll be impressed, and you'll get them after the meeting. So I'm just here to call on everyone and be the timekeeper, as we want to hear from every group, and really 1 minute or slightly more, please, to share the high points of what you talked about and any follow-up action. So group number 1, who's going to speak for group number 1?
I think we were remiss. We ended the meeting without picking one. I'm going to volunteer Mike to talk about his experience in Holland with silver starters. Mike, would you like to do that?
Hello, thank you very much. Sorry. One of the things we were speaking about entering entrepreneurship, and I mentioned a program that we had started here where we were helping people who were age 50 and above answer 2 questions. And I think the first question was very important from our discussion as well, is entrepreneurship something for me? And that's really understanding what the journey is to becoming an entrepreneur in terms of, do I have the energy to do it? Do I understand what it involves in terms of time, in terms of commitment and so on? Because a lot of people have a lot of passion and enthusiasm about entrepreneurship and starting up their own business, whether it's being their own boss or doing something to make a contribution, but really understanding what's involved is important, and then helping them develop that plan to set up their own business. But there were also some other flags, as we spoke about, in terms of not only understanding the time commitment, but also understanding the resources and making sure that people don't jeopardize their long-term financial security in terms of putting all their eggs in one basket in the hope that a business will succeed in the future.
Great. Thank you. That's perfect timing. And we're going to move on to group 2, please.
I think that was the group Doug was leading. Is that right?
Yes, Deborah, or Rick, you were going to report.
I was going to report. I just wanted to blame you first. So it was a brief amount of time, but we were talking about how success is measured and how off the mark that often is with entrepreneurship in our demographic. There's all kinds of one-person businesses that are wildly successful. 78% of the businesses in the United States before the pandemic were one-person businesses, and they're just shooting up during this pandemic era. So the idea is not to put false expectations on the definition of entrepreneurship. I think people can come in at all levels. Certainly there are hockey stick kind of returns available, but most of them are just making contributions to people and communities that people love. So ours was sort of trying to corral and put a definition around entry to entrepreneurship in our demographic. And it is actually one of the most exciting times to be an entrepreneur in my lifetime, especially at this age.
Perfect. Thank you. And group number 3?
Yes, I was asked to report back. And what we really talked about was, first of all, what older entrepreneurs bring to the table. And a lot of that we all agreed was the combination of wisdom and purpose, connecting the dots and really being motivated to give back. And we talked a bit about the social entrepreneur movement, Ashoka, and life work. One of the things I happen to be a second act coach, and I work with people who are looking at this transition. And we talked a little bit about the fact that people are not prepared, particularly when they leave corporate America. They're prepared financially sometimes to think about their financial future, and the companies support them in that, but there's no support for the possibility of doing something else and for the mental and emotional changes that are involved in going on your own. So we actually talked about the value of the Encore network is really to be able to start talking about this and how can we begin to support people more and put our heads together around providing ways that people can really think about this transition in a more optimistic and proactive way, because really people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation than they do the next 30 years of their lives, because society isn't ready for us. We are pioneers.
Judith, that's a wonderful summing up for that group, and it leads perfectly into a group number 4, which I was happy to be in, and which Larry is going to report quickly on.
Yes, thank you. You're right, Mary. Nice segue. We did touch on that subject as well. We had Kelly from Oracle in our group on the company side, so it was terrific to get her perspective in her program development role and everything she's doing about how to incorporate any entrepreneurial interests that population had for their role in the company, and what can the company do to support that movement. Because tremendous opportunities, as it's been shared here, about the experience we bring. And if this is all merged together in terms of experience and support and direction from the top to really take advantage of it, some interesting things could happen. And this movement is new to a lot of companies, but I think with the effort that we're advocating across the board, the message is hitting home. And the other message on the people side is that it is true. The majority are not prepared for retirement and are looking for purpose and meaning and are not sure and need to be educated about becoming an entrepreneur. So there's a lot of challenge for us. I have that in my military work, trying to help veterans or military members leaving the service to get into a new job or consider entrepreneurial activities. So I'm championing that point and trying to bring it home. But,
Great. I don't mean to cut you off, but I am going to, Larry. So
fair enough. Good.
We are last but not least group 5. And I will just highlight for everyone as we wrap up this report out, look at all the common strands we've come up with in just 15 minutes of how we can see the challenges and where we might begin to draw on some resources and solutions in our own Encore network and also partnering with corporations and nonprofits alike. So please, for group 5, who's reporting?
I can take it. We kind of worked through Doug's questions very quickly. So why are older founders more successful? We just went with Wendy's acronym of WISE, which I think is worth holding on to, which is wisdom, initiative, skills, and experience. I think we definitely had questions in terms of barriers to success being the funding issue, and trying to understand, as even funders get older, why are they not interested in funding older entrepreneurs, right? As in whether that's just our own ageism that still continues even as we go kind of past 50 ourselves. And I thought one issue that Jacob raised is that as more tools are made available that are easier, you don't have to be a software programmer. You can do more things that are kind of off the shelf where you don't have to have programming skills to be able to put things together, where there are some options there. And then finally, just kind of how do we leverage our strengths? I think that's a big piece. How do we, as kind of the 50 plus group, focus attention on this issue? And so Wendy said, we're just always talking about it, is one piece. And then again, going back to Jacob's comments, which is how do we provide the tools and the teaching to older entrepreneurs, as you guys have kind of mentioned.
Great. Well, thank you to every group, and very succinct but pithy reporting out to point us forward to some of the issues we might want to continue to tackle in this group and the Entrepreneur Network at large, not just within Encore, but broadening out our perspective. So thank you, and back to you, Tim, to wrap up.
Very good, thank you. Just to be able to show you very quickly how I've captured this, and we will be distributing this out. I captured through mind mapping success factors. Number 1, having a plan, being wise, and I apologize, I missed the S and the E in that, but I'm not going to take our time here. I'll get it from you in a minute. Understanding resource requirements, what we bring to the table, wisdom, purpose, motivation to give back. People want a new focus after retirement. The barriers, potential loss of retirement savings. Do we understand the risk? Do people know about this as an option? Are they aware of it? A lack of support after retirement or doing something else. Society isn't ready for us. Lack of funding, more levers, more support from the Encore Network. It's one of the things we want to consider here. Keep talking about it and providing the tools. Other things that I captured, do people, if people ask the question, is entrepreneurship for me? Do I have the time? Do I have the commitment? Do I understand what's at risk? And then how is success measured? Avoid false definitions in the process here. And what can companies do to support this movement? Is there anything that I had missed in this that somebody really wants captured? Okay. Again, I'm going to export this into a Word document. We'll get it out to everyone just to keep the dialogue going. So before we wrap things up, we're closing quickly on the end of the program hour. There's several things I want to share with you. First, I'd like to offer many thanks to Mary, Doug, and Wendy for your insightful and inspiring presentations here today. Given the limited time, you've really spurred a lot of thought and discussion around it. And I'd also like to thank all of the attendees for your contributions in your breakout groups. Secondly, I wanted to remind you that a recording of this session will be sent out to everyone who registered for the meeting. So you'll be able to go back and review this as frequently as you'd like. Next, we want to highlight some very relevant recent books and resources, which you'll see as Kelly posts a slide on that. Kelly, if you would go ahead and post that, please. So this will be sent out to you as well. Some of the resources here from Mary and Wendy, the books there. And then programs that are coming up as well, future programs from the Encore Network. We have the Intergenerational Affinity Group meeting on February 8th, and then February 9th, we have the 50+ Employment Affinity Group. You can find all of these programs on the Encore Network website, and we encourage you to do that. Then too, we want to know who among you would have an interest in further exploration of the Encore entrepreneurialism trend, and perhaps to the creation of a new affinity group focused specifically on that topic. If you do, please drop a note to us in the chat function so that we can get people together to try and move something like that forward. Finally, before you drop off, we'd like you to offer your reaction to today's program by answering a short poll. And Kelly, do you have a poll for us that you can launch? So if you go ahead and take that poll, let us know if this was helpful for you today. All right, and if you've taken the poll, if you have a couple seconds on hand and have an idea of future programming, we encourage you also to drop that in chat. Maybe today's conversation spurred some ideas for you. And if so, we want to make sure that we address what's on people's minds. So with that, here we are at 1 o'clock. We thank you all for attending today. Look forward to seeing you again in future programming. And just thank you very much for your participation.